Is that everything for you? Is that where it starts? Is the culture? Is that the foundation of what you believe to be a successful football club?
I do, and I had the opportunity to talk to an amazing woman who's, I think, top 20 most powerful people, in the Forbes list, and we were talking about culture, and she said, when I was a young business lady, I used to sit in these meetings and I used to think culture smulcher. She says, now that I'm an older, experienced business lady, I realize that culture is everything. And to me, it validates what I believe, only because in our sport, these are the most talented athletes in the world. And my job is to create an environment and a culture to where they're maximizing their best selves and they're playing from a place of positivity, belief, confidence. And a lot of times I feel like in coaching, we get in the way when we want to do things our way, right? And when players are given the space to express themselves, that's when you're going to get the best performances from each individual player. So again, I think that has to be the foundation of everything. Obviously, you have to tweak things and do some things, but it's got to come from a place of trust. And the only way you can build trust is through a culture that is transparent.
I think for a lot of people that haven't been involved in really any team sport, this concept of culture may be hard to understand. Create a happy environment, make sure everybody's enjoying each other's company, but it's pretty deep. So when you try and change a culture, I mean, where do you start?
Well, I think the most important aspect of creating a culture is eliminating the people that don't want to be a part of it.
And how do you figure out who those people are? Just by speaking to people?
Well, yeah, I think the three things that I live by, the core values I live by, are teamwork, effort, and perseverance, right? If you don't want to be a part of a team, and this is about you, then you don't belong in the culture, right? And the analogy I like to use is like a family, right? When kids are you raise a family, your parents, you're creating a culture. You're creating a culture within your household. Is it a positive culture, one where these kids can express themselves? Or do you expect these kids to do what you want, right? And there's a big difference in that. When the kids are allowed to express themselves, because some might like science, some might like art. But if you want an artist to be a scientist, there's going to be a lot of fighting. When you create an environment that is conducive to these kids expressing themselves in their best form, and that's all you want. You want kids that are disciplined, that want to be part of the family. Then everything works. Everything works in tandem. And I think so. A big part of the bigger picture now is a team. It's hard to get 30 guys all on the same page, but it's not hard to find 30 teammates. It's not hard. And that has to be a standard that is a non-negotiable. If this is about you and you want to do things irrespective of the team, it's not going to work, right? The other thing is effort. Got to come in every day and create and give maximum effort. The last thing is perseverance. Got to be willing to overcome some difficult challenges that lie ahead. So teamwork, effort, perseverance, these things are free. You decide as a human being when you wake up that you're willing to give those three things. And so, again, it starts with wanting to be a part of a team. And that is how culture starts. And if the answer is I don't, then you can't be a part of it. If the answer is yes, well, are you willing to give 100% every day? And are you willing to overcome when things don't go your way? And I think those three basic tenets will allow you to create a generic framework. And obviously there's a lot of details that go into that, but those are the non-negotiables. And I think those are the three things that we exhibited last year in the 4 months, right? The team was greater than the sum of its parts. The effort every day in training and what everyone saw in the games was 100%, 105%, 110. And the ability to overcome a change of coaches in the middle of the season and all the different things, not having an ownership, not knowing what their contractual situations were as players, there's a lot of things to overcome. going on the road in the playoffs. And so that became our identity. That's who we were, and that's how you build a culture.
Did you expect the culture at Real Salt Lake to thrive as fast as it did? I'm under the impression that a culture takes a while to develop and build, and I'm sure there's still a lot of growth that Real Salt Lake still needs under yourself, but it did seem like they kind of latched on to your style, your coaching leadership pretty quickly. Were you expecting that?
To be honest, Tom, I didn't know what to expect. I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know. So it wasn't like I had expectations. I had time to think about expectations. It was literally on the ground running. We had a game in 2 days. Yeah. So I think from that perspective, it was, and I agree with you. Cultures take time, but I think what you saw is a glimpse into what the culture could be, and what the expectations are moving forward. And another interesting thing that I had our sports performance coach, Ryan Cotter, put together was the running metrics under Freddie in 20 games and under myself under 14 games. And in every metric that we record, the group improved exponentially. Didn't change necessarily the sessions. We trained the mentality in the way we wanted to train. The duration of the sessions were shorter, but the emphasis was on mentality, whether we were defending, attacking, transitioning, whatever the exercise we were doing, the mindset that was needed to execute this at the highest level. Those were the demands. And the two most important metrics that were shown, that I saw, that were unbelievable, were we were ranked, I think, 25th in sprints in the league out of 27 teams, and that went down to 6th in the league as far as sprints. And sprint distance was another one that went from like 24 to like 9. And sprinting for me is a mentality, and it's a desire, it's a willingness. And so not changing anything, but the mentality and the way we went about our work was phenomenal. And that the great thing about this social experiment, for lack of a better term, was it was the same group of players. No one changed. And so when you talk about culture and the impact that has, it's seen in the data as well. So not only like speaking esoterically and philosophically about culture, it's in the numbers. And it's in numbers where you're saying, we don't change the way we're training. We don't change it. We're just changing the mentality. And we went from 26th to 6th in sprints. Fantastic.
Historically, Marcelo Bielsa, who I know you're rather fond of, you mentioned you were born in Argentina. He's a cult hero. He's up there with Maradona, basically. Maybe not quite that high, but he's good. He's a big believer. You and I both know that he's a big believer on his teams being the hardest working teams. I think Leeds are in the relegation zone right now, and they're not working as hard as they have done over the years. You went to a 3-5-2. You went to a more aggressive style. Is that the style you want to play? Or did that change with the 4-2-3-1 in the playoffs?
I think having the tactical flexibility to play in a 4 and play in a 3 is really important. And given where you are in the season, given where you are with players available, given what the opponents are playing, all these different variables will lend themselves to what formation we play. But the mentality never changes. So whilst you're changing formations and maybe personnel, we want to play the same way in a 3-5-2 that we do in a 4-2-3-1. In the 3-5-2, you're more vertically aligned so that you can put pressure on the ball, but you're also exposing yourself a little bit in the back in transition, which we experienced as a group. In the 4, solidified more in the back. At times, you can't always get pressure on the ball because you're covering more the width of the field with the 4 instead of the 3. So you have an extra number that's covering the width. But I think it's critical that as a team, we're flexible enough to be able to change the formation without losing sight of the mentality that we want to play with.
It's interesting because, and I hate asking this question. I really hate it. And I've covered Major League Soccer and Real Salt Lake for like 5 years now. I played another sport in another lifetime. that we don't need to go into. But I've traveled on the road and I played in front of pretty big crowds. I don't understand why it's so difficult. I haven't been on a road trip with any Major League Soccer club. I don't understand why it's so hard in Major League Soccer to pick up results on the road. And I don't understand why Real Salt Lake will play at home and then the next week they'll go on the road and it's two completely different teams, but the personnel's just about the same. You could keep the exact same 11. But is it more on the home team asserting dominance in Major League Soccer than the away team trying to play the way they want to play? Like, I don't understand. Because the pitch is the same size. There's a bit of extra noise in the background. Everything's the same.
No, you raise a really good question, and I think I don't have the answer to that. I'll tell you, as a player playing in this league and going abroad, or going away to play games, there's just this preconceived thought that the home team is going to come out guns blazing, like they're going to come out and really smother you. And the thought was always, if we endure the first 20 minutes, we're going to find our moment to take control of this game. And then as the game wears on, now the pressure grows for the home team, making it easier for now us as visitors to find a way to get a result. The problem is that you're saying if we can endure the first 20 minutes, and so if you concede in those first 20 minutes, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You knew that it was going to be hard. You conceded, and here we go again. And so for me, it's more psychological than it is physical or personnel. It's the mindset that the home team has an advantage. And I think it's experienced across all sport, where you're the home team, you're going to win. Like, that's just the thought. I think what we did getting into the playoffs and then, winning a couple of games on the road, I think might start to change that narrative for our group. Whereas if we're organized and we're disciplined and we play as a collective, we can get results on the road. So it doesn't feel as daunting as it did before we embarked on this playoff run.
Right. So the playoff run, for as much experience as you've had in this league, it still taught you something, right? Like you had to have learned, because very few teams do what you did.
We learned a lot. And I think, again, it goes back to, we'd suffered a couple tough defeats at home with 3 in the back. And so, meeting with some of the experienced players and talking about, we got to get a win here, and the first thing that we all talked about as a group was, do we feel comfortable going back to a 4, even though we hadn't played it in a few months, but we'd played it the previous, the first 6-7 months of the season. And the answer was absolutely, we feel comfortable. Let's go for it. And so that ability to have leaders that are flexible and committed. Again, when players own it, players have accountability. Players are willing to give more than they ever thought possible because they're a part of the problem solving, right? And I think that's what we experienced as a group. And in that moment, it was our formula to be successful on the road and try to make a run in the playoffs.
I hope I'm not being too harsh, but I thought last year in 2021 we got a pretty good taste of what that roster could do in the 3-5-2. And it just felt like you couldn't figure out how to defend transition. And part of that, in my opinion anyway, was kind of your own undoing with turning the ball over in areas of the pitch that you should never turn the ball over. But there were other series of plays where you probably should have defended better. Do you believe that can be fixed? Do you believe like there are a couple positions that need to be addressed, and you don't need to go and call anybody out, but do you believe that can be fixed?
Absolutely. I think you've alluded to it. You lose the ball. Again, the 3-5-2, the way we were playing it, it was an aggressive version of the 3-5-2 where we were releasing a central defender, right? So now we're playing with 2 in the back. And so the onus is on the ball carrier and the players off the ball moving to create options so that we don't lose the ball in bad spots. Again, those are decisions that are being made in real time, and we found ourselves on the wrong end of those plays too often. And so yes, those you can fix that. But given that we're now faced with we have to win at Kansas City, or go home, the change was fixed. We fixed it by changing the formation. So again, I think if we have a preseason, if we have more time to really break down, again, at that point we were playing 5 games in 2 weeks, heading to the decision day game. It's hard to fix things. The guys are recovering, takes 2 days, and then they're playing on the 3rd day. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to get on the field and really work through it. Most of the work was done on video, and that's not the same as it is on the field and feeling what that feels like in real time. So I think given enough time, we can definitely patch that and address that. But again, I think we had some really, really good performances in the 3. Where beating Colorado at home to win the Rocky Mountain Cup was one memorable moment where I thought the guys were spot on in every decision that was made with the ball that never led to dangerous chances in the counter.
Apologies, I'm jumping around a bit here, but I remember speaking to Elliot. I can't even remember if it was on or off the record, but I said, do you feel like he controls his own destiny? And he kind of hinted at yes. And I felt like you did. Did you feel like you did?
I don't know in destiny in which way. I felt like I controlled my destiny. Like the onus was on me to show up every day and be the best version of myself. If you're talking about destiny as far as taking this position over permanently, or removing the interim tag, that was never what I was doing it for. My coaching journey is not about a job. My coaching journey is to become a better coach every day. You're going to get jobs and you're going to lose jobs. What I'm steadfast about is becoming a better coach. What are my deficiencies? What areas do I need to work on? How is the culture? What kind of players work best in the system that I want to play? The style of play given the players that are available. These are things that I'm constantly assessing and self-reflecting upon that are important to me. Jobs come and go, as we know in this business, but the most important thing, the consistent thing, the destiny part of it, is that I become a better coach with every training session and every day that comes by.
So there was no, on decision day, you obviously knew you had to win to get into the playoff. There was no thought that entered your mind, like, if I lose this game, I don't know what the future holds. If I win, I improve my chances of removing the interim tag. None of that entered your mind. Because that's crazy to me, Pablo, that you can't. Because I panic under pressure, I guess. Because I'd be thinking about it. I think most people would think about it.
Well, let's just go back a couple of months when the job was offered as far as the interim job. And I was asked about a week later if I wanted an interview for the job. And I said, I want to put all of my energy in galvanizing this group to take on the next 4 months and make sure that we're on path to compete for the playoffs. That's where I want to put my energies. If you're asking me to choose between that and interviewing for the job, I'm going to take that, because that will essentially lead to what we're talking about here, which is interviewing for the job, right? So, and again, I love to coach. It doesn't matter what title I have. And if it wasn't going to be recognized here, I knew that if I do a good job, there's other opportunities around the world. You know what I'm saying? So again, becoming a better coach is a lifestyle for me. It's not about a job. It's not about, I want to coach for Man United. That's not my goal. My goal is, when everything is said and done, I'll look back on my coaching career and go, man, you've grown tremendously and you're retiring as a very good coach. And that's what I look towards. I don't look towards any particular job that validates whether or not I'm a good coach or not.
So I kind of get it, although I've never, like, I'm an outsider looking in, right? You're an insider kind of in there. Why? What is the obsession with coaching? I think I get it, but I'm not in your shoes. I can't act as if I am a coach, although I do have a young child, so as you mentioned earlier, I kind of can. But why is it so obsessive to you?
Again, I think for me, it's about leading men, and again, I think all of us we have a purpose in life, and I when I got let go in Colorado, I spent 2 years, and I didn't get back in the game because I wanted to see if soccer was something that I loved, or if it was something that essentially my father forced me to love. And the answer I came away with after 2 years was, it's both. My father's love for the game was injected into me, and not having soccer in my life for 2 years gave me crazy anxiety. And I was waking up every day with my family, taking my kids to school, going on walks with my wife, working out with my wife. I mean, I was living what people think is the most ideal life. And I was empty, and I didn't have a purpose. And so I love managing because, one, it gives me a sense of purpose. And that purpose is bringing a group of people together and aligned in one vision and moving in one direction. And the great thing about managing is it's never perfect. It's never even close to perfect. So every day you're managing personalities. You're fine-tuning your tactics. You're managing staff. You're making big decisions that will affect the whole group. And so you wake up every day, and it's not like, what's my purpose? You're living your purpose. You're in it. You're amongst it. Bullets are flying on the weekends. You get results. You don't get results. And so this is what leads me to become a better coach, become a better person, become a better manager, a mentor. And so I'm not thinking about what my purpose on this planet is. I'm living it. And the aspirations for me is again, to get at the end of the road and look back and say, man, I've been able to influence people's lives in a positive way by sharing what my dad shared with me, which was love for football, to these young men that are aspiring to be the best that they can be.
You see footage across the world of managers losing their mind. Peter Vermees may have done it a couple of times towards the end of the regular season and playoffs there. But you're pretty cool, calm, and collected, it seems. You always try and stay. Did you have to teach yourself how to control your emotions?
Absolutely. I think, and this is what experience gives you. I think when I went from playing right into coaching in Colorado, I was living and coaching the game as I did as a player on the field. And, in those 2 years of not coaching, I had a ton of time to reflect and write and think about areas of my coaching experience to that point that I wanted to improve on. One of them was becoming detached from the emotional part of the game, to be able to sit back and look from afar to make the best decisions that the game needed for our group to be either get back into the game or to secure a lead. And you can't do that from a place of passion, because passion always blurs reason, right? And so I think my experience now as the years have gone by have been to be more stoic, because again, when the players on the field look over on the sidelines and they see someone going crazy, what does that say to them? It says he's out of control. It says that he is behaving the way we're feeling, as opposed to looking across and going, everything's calm. We're going to get this. It's not a problem. Stay the course. And so it's the nonverbals for me are critical as a manager, as a leader on the sidelines, to allow the players to be confident in what we're doing, even if we're under it. Like in the Seattle game, we were under it for what felt like probably 70, probably 90 minutes. But we never wavered. We never wavered, stayed the course. And even in the penalty kicks, this is how we're going to go about it. This is how we're going to take it. And I think that place of reason, the place of stepping back, and a place of confidence that we put a great game plan together. Let's stay the course. If it doesn't work this time, no problem. We'll learn from it, and we'll continue to improve as we move forward.
You brought up the Seattle game. It triggered something. I heard a story. I don't know if it's true. You can confirm. But you didn't write the list of players you wanted to take the penalty before you asked them in the huddle because you obviously wanted people to want to take the penalty. Did you learn that from? I mean, like, I don't know if people think like you, Pablo.
Again, a lot of the way I manage came from playing for 16 years. I think I played. So you gather a lot of experiences that I like to tap into, because I think a big part of managing is understanding where the player's coming from. It's not about you. And this is the big thing about the way I manage. If it's about me, then I'll dictate everything. And I'll tell you what, I'm only going to get 60% from the players because they're saying, oh, this is about you. As a player, I really enjoyed coaches that allowed us to express ourselves, obviously within a structure, obviously within a culture. But it's a player's game that was created by players for the players. It'll always be a player's game. And that's why I feel like the players gave what they gave, the sprint metrics, the desire, the never giving up. It's because it's theirs, right? And so going back to the Seattle game in the penalty shootout, I remember a coach asking when we were in the playoffs in Dallas, and he said, Pablo, do you want to take it? Do you want to take a PK? And I said, you can put me wherever you want because I've already scored it. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, I don't understand. I said, yeah, put me wherever you want in that lineup because I've already scored my PK. And afterwards, we ended up having a beer and talking about it. He said, explain to me where you're coming from. I said, I was so confident that I was going to make it that I was telling you to put me wherever you want in that lineup. And so, fast forward to where we were in Seattle, I brought the group in. I said, who's number one? And no one said anything. And then I think it was Aaron. Yeah. He said, Aaron's number one. I said, right. Because Aaron in his mind has already scored it. Yeah. He's already scored it. And so then we went like that. Who's two, who's three, who's four? And then the last one was, who's six? And it was Miriam and Justin both at the same time said, I'll take it. And at that point I said, between the two, you figure out who's taking it. Because again, it's ownership, it's belief, it's confidence. It's not what I think. It's not who am I to tell somebody to have confidence? That's not how it works. Confidence comes from within and it's expressed outwardly. And so when the players say, I want to take it here, I want to take it here. However, going into the next, if there was going to be a next penalty shootout, already have an idea of how that looked. And again, if we go in the same order, it becomes predictable for the goalkeeper. So maybe changing things up as far as the order's concerned.
I think Marcelo Silva took the fifth penalty, which was a surprise.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And again, if I'm a coach, I would never have done that.
Right.
And then we wouldn't have won.
That's crazy.
Right? I mean, that's how it works, right? If I would have done it my way, we wouldn't have won that game.
I just think there are managers forever, ever since I've been around, that almost want to be the center of attention. And I don't know why that is. The media, we're probably to blame because we give the managers so much attention, which maybe we shouldn't. I'd
appreciate that, Tom. I'd appreciate you taking some of the pressure off. No, I think there's a certain amount of responsibility that the coach is absolutely responsible for creating the culture, for creating the system. It's the players that express themselves during the game. It's the players that win the game. It's the players. I'm telling you, more times than not, losses are because coaches get in the way. And I'm speaking very generally here, but right. That's the way I look at coaching. Coaching is again, like we spoke about earlier, the most talented athletes in the world. I mean, look at there's only so many professional soccer players, right? Especially in this country. Let them do their thing. They're here for a reason. You brought them on board for a reason. How do you let them express themselves, create a culture where they thrive, and let it happen? And again, a lot of that I gathered from Bruce Arena, where he was the king of that.
We don't have a ton of time. I will wrap it up. I'm under the opinion, good managers, good leadership, I guess, in any setting, business, soccer, American football, walk into a room and they see it differently than most. They can kind of pick out the people that are friendly and the people that kind of are after more for them. Do you think that's fair? Is that a fair state? Do is that what you practice too? Like when you walk into a room or you walk in to speak to the team, like how fast can I get a sense of where the team's at mentally right now? Is that part of it?
I think that's definitely a part of it. Obviously, I think you can't be quick to judge, but you have an idea, you know, their engagement, their eye contact. And that's one of the things I've noticed when I first took over is the eyes when I was speaking were engaged. It was focused. It was, and a lot of times you'll know when guys are drifting that they're not checked in, right? And so, but what I've also learned about players is that they have personal lives too. And it's not just for as much as the media, as much as coaches talk about just the game, we forget that these are human beings that have difficulties like all of us. And so a lot of times the lack of eye connection, the lack of this, a poor practice, a poor week of training has nothing to do with you. It's not anything against the coach. It's not anything against their teammates. They're going through some hard times at home. And so it's about pulling guys aside and talking to them about their lives and where they're at. Is there any way I can help, right? And so I think that's where my managerial style transcends sport. It's about humans working collaboratively to achieve a certain goal.
How much patience do you have?
Well,
because 18-year-olds are different than 32-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I bet you were different at 18 than you were at 32. I guess I should also probably ask, like, at what age did you figure it all out? Or not all of it out, but, like, get a better understanding of the mental side of the game? Or
Tom, I think this is a work in progress for me. I'll never figure it out. I don't have... Again, I said I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know.
And you're cool with that.
That's just the way it is. I mean, I'd be a fraud to myself, which in turn would be a fraud to the rest of the guys if I acted like I knew everything. I don't know everything. I'm 45 years old, And by the time I figure it all out, I'll have to retire because I won't be able to relate to the generation of players that I'll be coaching, right? And so, I feel like I have a great, and I have kids that are, 14 and 16. I understand how difficult it is to raise kids in these times with social media and where a lot of the kids get their validation for who they are in life is through social media. And so I'm still, I think, young enough to be able to relate to that and come from a place of empathy. But more importantly, I'm comfortable with the things I don't know. And that really inspires me to continue learning. And I'll be a learner for life. And hopefully end up at the end with some great experiences and memories like we had at the end of 2021.
I bet you've had managers in the past that have pretended like they know everything, because I feel like a lot of managers do that. You're okay with not knowing everything? Do you think there's a better response there? Because if you know everything and you say something, and the person you're speaking to thinks that you know everything, that's probably why managers pretend to know everything. Which is really weird that you're like okay publicly saying like I'm not. Do you think there's like, because you're so transparent, there's like a better reception? It's like,
yeah, I definitely think when you speak, because again, I think as players, as a player, I had insecurities as well. I didn't know everything, although the media at times made me feel like I knew everything because I was playing with the national team and was going to World Cups. The truth was, I left a lot on the table. There's a lot. I look back at my career, I'm like, man, I really didn't know a whole lot. However, I got to a really high level. And so now in this coaching role, I think it's what makes you human, not knowing everything, right? I think it'd be crazy for anyone, and even in their respective fields, to say, yeah, I know everything. I mean, who is this? And I think there's a level of trust there between player and manager when you're embarking on the truth together. What is that truth? Every year, there's going to be a different truth that you're seeking, right? But if we're working on it together, because we both don't know everything, I think there's a real organic relationship that's built versus I know everything, you do what I say. Then it just becomes like a dictatorship. And whilst that might work for a year, that's not a culture that will thrive for the long term.
Lastly, and this is kind of a lame question to end on, but it can be quite powerful. 10, 20, 30 years' time, when people look back on however many years you survive, as you mentioned, this is a forever changing industry. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want Real Salt Lake fans to remember about the time Pablo Mastroeni was in charge?
I think that as a team, as an organization, as a city, as a state, that we were able to experience some of the most memorable moments that Salt Lake has ever experienced.
Silverware,
a player that comes through the academy system and is now representing the U.S. national team at the World Cup. Any member of staff that goes on to achieve their dreams. Any fan that was a ball boy or ball girl at a game and was inspired by the players who were inspired by our culture, that went on to achieve whatever they dreamt as a child. Again, I think this experience for me is a human experience. It's one that utilizes soccer as a conduit to dreaming big, and achieving great things in life. And I think that's what sport does. It brings people together. It allows us all to believe. It temporarily freezes time to enjoy in the wonderful moments that can only be experienced by a collective, and just cherish those memories. And silverware is definitely a part of that in sport. But I think, again, the run that we went on to end the year when no one believed in the group, I think is something that all these players can take with them forever. Not that we fell short, but the feelings that were in that locker room when we won an away game to get in, when we won an away game in Seattle, when we won an away game in Kansas City, the celebration, the elation that comes from doing something and being part of a team, even the guys that weren't dressed in that locker room celebrating. This is the greatest joy of my life. This is it. And if you don't take the time to enjoy those moments, then for me, you're playing the game for the wrong reasons. Because at the end of the season, there's only one team that's celebrating. That means there's 26 other teams that are very disappointed. And so when you talk about culture and you talk about what it means, what I'd like to say is, what does it feel like? And how often can we get to that moment after a big win on the road and celebrate like that? That's the feel that we want.
You think you can coach winning? That's what it sounds like. Because winning, having fun, creating culture, it's all inclusive. A good culture and a losing football club kind of doesn't go hand in hand, right? You do have to have a little bit of success to create a culture that's...
It's what precedes what? It's both. You need culture to give yourself a platform, but you need wins to validate the culture.
Right. But you can coach winning. Is that what the playoff run taught? That's probably what it taught me. Not taking anything away from the team, because the team was talented and your roster was good, your squad was good, but I felt like it was like a lesson on learning how to win.
And that's a belief, and that's a mindset, and I do think that's a culture. And again, I think in 2016, it was a very similar situation where we were picked to finish bottom of the league, and we ended up competing for a supporter shield with a group that a lot of people would say maybe wasn't the most talented, and with a coach that you can definitely say wasn't the most talented.
I've got a super general question for you. As general as can be. No wrong or right answer, but what are you looking forward to most going into like the next season, knowing it's 5-6 weeks away?
4. Yeah.
4?
Yeah. Preseason starts in 4.
I think the fan base is kind of curious because obviously the circumstance that you came in, very brief, quick turnaround, change in tactics. I think a lot of people liked what they saw, but what is Pablo Mastroeni just most excited for going into this new season?
I think really is continuing to build off of what we did in the last 4 months, and continuing to make incremental improvements in the way we play, the mentality, and really building the culture to endure sustained success at the club. I think, not that it was. It wasn't easy doing what we did last year, but I think it's a snapshot of what we can become as a club, and what I'm hopeful with, especially with the possibility of new ownership and new investment, is that we can create something special, that lasts, that's sustainable. That's what I'm most excited for, is to build off of what we did last year and continue making the incremental. Because again, there's no need for wholesale changes in any aspect. It's really about continuing to improve, and I think you'll always be improving. And then different players come, and you're changing, tweaking things, and accommodating. And I think that's the art of coaching as well, which is these are the players. You manage them, and you got to manage all the players differently because everyone's at different periods in their careers. And so I think, as a general question, is to answer your general question in a really specific kind of way, is to continue building on the momentum of last year in a way that gives the club, the fans, and the city the sustained success that it deserves for all the support that they've given everyone at the club.